Hey Brandon, I am here for a little preview I got to do. We've been, getting these opportunities here and there for different games.
I'm hungry, but we're
Yeah,
getting lots of cool, game announcements and lots of little bundles of independent games. I want impressions, baby. I want appointments. I want interviews. I want the codes. What do we? What are
I
you
didn't
getting
do
your
an
hands
interview
on?
for this one, but yeah, this is yeah. So Skully, it's coming out in August, so it's not that far off. I'm not sure like how long ago they announced it. I didn't. I feel like I've only heard about it recently. But you're playing as a reanimated skull, so it's kind of like controlling a marble, and rolling around on different levels, but platforming as well. So I was trying to think what it reminds me of because it's not quite like Monkey Ball, because like Monkey Ball you're like controlling the stage. I think maybe the thing it reminds me of the most might be like a Metroid Prime like Morph Ball stuff. But yeah, so just like it's one of those things where you've got like a lot of physics and build up speed as you keep going in a direction, and then like a lot of the platforms are tilted so you can have to account for gravity when you're jumping and trying to get through things. But the story setup of it is like there is the skull basically washes up on this island, right? And this mysterious deity, I think in the first two levels that I played, like they don't even really explain it, but it's explained in all the like supplemental materials that they gave me.
Of course.
But yeah, so this deity like uses this magic clay to bring it back to life. And so like I think he's like an earth god or something like that. And so what's interesting with the clay is sort of your antagonist in a way. I don't know if the best way to describe it, but like your weakness is water. So like if you go into the water at all, it starts washing away some of the clay, and if you run out of clay, then Scully's just dead.
So it's not insta death. It's just kind of a slow
Right. Yeah, it's not
eroding.
slow either, but it's
Okay.
yeah, like yeah, if you're in the water for a couple of seconds, then it'll wash the clay away. And then your checkpoints are like these little like basically mud puddles. And so you heal by just like sinking into the mud and then coming back up with a full ball of clay. So some interesting ideas there. And then the one thing that they didn't explain is that kind of to sort of lead you through the level, there's all these little flowers. It's almost like picking up rings in Sonic. So you're rolling around picking up flowers, and like sometimes you'll see like a hill, and there's some other spots up there to go to. There'll be almost like these half pipe-ish kind of turns that you get into in points during the level design. And the deity, I think his name is Terry, of all things.
Nice.
He
Casual.
kind of explains that like there's been this like feud within like his family with his siblings and stuff, and so he's trying to get you to help, I don't know, beat some sense into his brothers and sisters. And so that's kind of your quest, is to like go along and find these other deities, and confront them, I guess, and
Do
probably
you
do
have a
some boss
voice? Like, is
battles.
there a banter between you and this character, or is it just pretty much the narration?
It was a, I'd say Terry definitely has kind of like a banterish kind of way of speaking, but Scully, yeah, doesn't talk. So yeah, so the first chapter is pretty much just focused on the ball, and then there are also points where there are like vines growing on the walls that you can sort of climb up and go around that way. And then when you get into the second one, then you can use the clay to create like this sort of like rock monster kind of thing. And so it's kind of cool because you see Scully like go into the clay and then come up with like this muddy, almost like Clayface, right?
Cool.
Like
Okay. All
very
right.
muddy creature,
You
and then
got me.
like after a couple of seconds, like some grass and stuff starts to grow out of his head, and then you can use it to sort of like punch through these kind of like weak stone walls, and then you can also like charge up like a ground pound, so you smash, and then the shockwave will kill the enemies, which the only enemies I've seen so far are like these bubble monsters. And so again, water's your weakness. So even with the
Uh,
clay monster, they'll wash away the monster, and then you're just left with Scully again. So you've got to really like hit the shockwave from a distance. Oddly enough, it doesn't feel like trying to punch them directly works. I think again because water's your weakness, so you've guys really got to work with the vibration of the shockwave.
Did it seem like this golem was just kind of one of many different transformations that Skully can make, or is this like a predominant combat thing?
From like the trailer and stuff, it does seem like there are other ones that come up. What was interesting too is that when there'd be times when I'd have to like pop out of the clay monster and to like go through like small gaps as Skully, and but I was never able to go back. The levels have been pretty linear. The first two levels are really linear. But what was interesting is when I got to the next checkpoint and I created another monster, it showed me having like two of them that were active, and I think up to three of them that can be active. So at
Oh,
some point, I'm gonna have to like jump out and like coordinate monsters.
yeah. I wonder if you like leave one on a pressure plate or any of that
Yeah,
classic
there's probably
business.
puzzles like that, I bet.
Sure.
Yeah. And then I think the only other like little mechanic I saw was there are like these there's kind of like flat stones sticking up that you kind of like you punch to like knock down as a bridge and walk over that way. Um, so yeah, so it's an interesting platformer in a way, but it's also like kind of basic. You know, like I said, the levels, the first two levels are like very straightforward and linear, and like there are a couple of little extra spots with some more flowers and stuff, but not really. It wasn't really like you could do a whole lot of exploration. So I don't know if that's indicative of how the whole game will be. If it's just like these first two levels are extra basic just to get you the feel of things.
Is the rolling fun? Like, did you feel like you could kind of cut loose a little bit and do tricks? Like you mentioned, like half pipe ish type stuff. Like, where was there a part of it where you're like, oh, let me try to get that thing and roll up and grab it, like, or does it feel kind of constrained?
There wasn't anything I would consider like tricks or like really like building up like a real big like half pipe momentum. But I do feel like the rolling at least feels good. You know, like you definitely get a sense that like okay, I'm building up speed and so like that Sonic thing to where like when you get at momentum and you're going fast, like it feels it feels good. But there are also times when you have to slow down and like okay, I got to get on this little tiny platform and that little tiny platform. I have to see more. Right now, it just feels sort of basic, even on like an art perspective. Like it just feels almost like, like I don't want to like be too disparaging, but it almost feels like just kind of like out of the box. Like this is like what this engine would look like, and almost like a Cradle level kind of thing.
Oh yeah, well it's funny because you remind me of some stuff I've played in Dreams when you talked about rolling around
Right.
platformer, and so that's what's kind of like informing a lot of my questions, because when I would play stuff like that, and this is some of the issues I had with my experience with Sonic over the years too, is that I'm like I really want to just tear through this level and just have fun and doing corkscrews and stuff, and it's like that's the strategy, is that you don't want to go too fast because then it'll get really hard to control this character.
Right.
And so it's just like kind of back and forth of like how hard do we want to make this versus how much do we want people. And that's why I'm wondering if you're just playing the first couple levels, if the game is just like okay, have fun, and then it'll start to get tricky, or then we'll start to dump on more
Right.
abilities and stuff that you have to do. But for now, just have fun
Yeah.
with him. So
And then the clay monster. It's sort of the opposite. Like the clay monster is like really slow and boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense. That like you expect that, but doesn't have this like even like charging up that attack. It's like okay, this is taking it like a little bit maybe too long.
because you talk about the details like on the golem when he gets created, and
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, that sounds like, because I'm imagining this is for kind of a cartoony vibe to this, where I was like, maybe that's a little more detailed than I have pictured in my mind. But you said it has a little bit of a game maker vibe, just in terms of which again makes me wonder if it's going to make up for this lack of crazy detail, or a crazy pretty game with lots of different fun things you can turn into, and just kind of a raw pleasurable spin on in each environment of just like getting around the space and
Yeah,
rolling
they
around.
did say there in I think the preview guide it says there's going to be 7 environments, 18 levels overall, so not like crazy big, but maybe because like the second level was so much longer than the first one, so I don't know. Like when you say 18 levels, like you just sort of assume the second one is indicative, but maybe not. But yeah, but it's only $30. Comes out August 4th. PC, PS4, Xbox, Switch, basically anything you want to play it on. Worth keeping an eye on. I don't know if it's like a surefire indie hit, but could be a fun little platformer.
Yeah, it sounds like you liked what you saw. There just wasn't like a ton, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It didn't really like go outside the basics so far. So it's kind of hard to say until we see a little bit more of it.
And I feel bad because we just got Skeletak, and then we got Skully, and then we
Yeah.
got, you know what, like there's so many indie games, there's so many tiny fun platformers and cartoony games that we've gotten recently that it's just like no, I really want all of these to be separate in my brain, but it's so easy for this stuff. So I will rely on you for more Skully news, Blood,
Sure.
to give us the update, because I'm going to confuse this with at least one other game. But yeah, is this something that you think you'll probably actively search out in the future, or is it just like one of these days Skully will launch and you'll be like, all right, Skully?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. We'll just. I guess we'll just have to see.
Yeah,
You know.
fair enough.
But yeah. Neat little game.